Hi, this is Remembering the Past with Corey Franklin, the show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start with Hans Riegel, who died in Bonn, Germany at the age of 90, and Hans Riegel was the German candy maker who was in charge of making gummy bears. His father started the company in 1920, Haribo, Hans Riegel of Bonn, and gummy bears have been a huge international hit ever since. In an editorial, the Chicago Tribune did a testimony to Hans Riegel. They wrote, "Today we pay tribute to Hans Riegel, who died recently at 90. You probably never heard his name. His obituary didn't appear on the front page. But make no mistake, Riegel profoundly altered the world for millions of children, and okay, we admit it, legions of adults. Riegel popularized the gummy bear. The head of German company Haribo, he built a candy empire on a simple gelatinous bear invented by Riegel's father. The gummy bear spawned the gummy worm, the gummy frog, the gummy fish, the gummy rabbit, an entire ecstatic cosmos of gumminess, not to mention its tasty cousins in the sour gummy family. In our opinion, none was as perfect as the gummy bear, a color-drenched, fruit-flavored, chewy moment of joy. In the pantheon of candy immortals like M&M's and Snickers, Tootsie Roll Pops and Milky Ways, gummies reign. Riegel's father created the first gummies in 1922. Why bears? Riegel was inspired by the performing brown bears that once appeared in circuses. A 2007 makeover replaced the bear's fierce expression with a smile, writers reported. Not that we ever stopped to notice the bear's facial features and the flash from hand to mouth. The gummy has wriggled deep into the culture. Gummies starred in their own 1980s Disney television show, Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears, which spawned a line of books and we're told action figures. We are not making this up. Several years ago, Los Angeles artist Yaya Chow spent 2 months stringing gummy bears onto monofilament lines to create a 45-pound gummy bear chandelier. We're not making that up either. Other great moments in gummy history. In 2003, Canadian painter Nicole Vogelzang drew critical kudos for gummy still lifes displayed at Toronto's Paris-Nadimi Gallery. In a 2006 Portland, Oregon museum exhibit, artist Chandra Bachi displayed Gummy Big Bang 2, a 120-square-foot primordial eruption of gummy bears, worms, sharks, and spiders. A museum curator told a reporter that the artwork was a comment on the ludicrous nature of commercialism and capitalism today. The gummy industry has gone completely wild with the types of gummy they're creating. On that point, we'd have to agree. We're gummy purists. Bears first, last, and always, and stick to the traditional flavors. Orange, lemon, strawberry, forget those insolent pineapple-flavored ones. The candy business, as we all know, is a cutthroat market. Taste change, flavors and combination of flavors, blue, raspberry, cran apple, butter, rum, root beer come into favor and then fizzle. Few candies endure through generations, and even fewer can claim fans just as ardent at 8 as at 78. Can't get enough gummies? The website vat19.com offers a 26-pound, yes 26-pound, gummy bear in 4 different flavors. In case you're wondering, these delightful bears pack 32,000 calories. The company says the $149.99 bear has a 1-year shelf life, if it lasts that long. We're going to move from Hans Riegel to the greatest football coach in University of Washington history. A brief mention of the dog father, Don James. Don James died at the age of 80, and he won 4 Rose Bowls coaching the Huskies, and he beat Michigan for a part of the national championship in 1991. Here's KIRO-TV in Seattle to talk about Don James.
He was called the Dog Father. Don James was head coach of the Husky football team from 1975 through 1992. He didn't just coach, he was the coach with the most wins in the program's history. That's what UW fans remembered tonight as they marched into a volleyball game.
I remember, I think, most his intensity, certainly his dedication, and I think his discipline on the team.
During his 18 years at the helm, he led Washington to 6 conference titles and the 1991 National Championship. His 1991 team finished with a perfect record and beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl. It's regarded as the greatest team in Husky history.
He was like the guy. He was Mr. Husky. He was great.
But the coach's career wasn't without controversy. James resigned after the Pac-10 Conference announced sanctions against the Husky program, including a bowl ban and scholarship cuts. It happened after an investigation into UW players receiving money for little or no work. James didn't think those penalties were fair.
Maybe he became the scapegoat for it all. I don't know, but that's how I felt it was.
The current UW coach, Steve Sarkisian, issued this statement today. "My family and I are extremely saddened to hear of Coach James's passing. His accomplishments as a football coach stand alone, but what made him truly special is the quality of the man he was away from the game. The guidance and leadership he instilled into the program and community are still felt today and will continue to be felt here for a long, long time.
Well, we're going to move from Washington to Great Britain. The rest of our show will be English tonight. We're going to start out with Sir Anthony Caro, who died at the age of 89. He was one of the great abstract sculptors of the 20th century, a student of Henry Moore. He liked to work in mediums like steel and metal plates. Here's Matthew Bannister from the BBC4 Last Word on Sir Anthony Caro.
Sir Anthony Caro was one of the greatest sculptors of the second half of the 20th century. He placed his large-scale abstract works, often brightly coloured and often made from metal, directly onto the floor of the gallery, avoiding the plinths which had separated viewer from artwork in the past. Anthony Caro read engineering at Cambridge in the 1940s. After 2 years in the Fleet Air Arm during the war, he went to the Regent Street Polytechnic and Royal Academy of Art, where he met and later married a fellow student, the painter Sheila Girling. Anthony worked as an assistant to Henry Moore during the 1950s, but his own work came to prominence in the 60s, when he made the bright red metal piece Early One Morning.
I was working in the garage at home, which I did for years, a one-car garage, very cramped, and I stuck up a piece of aluminium against the back wall, and that suggested that I should put two flat pieces horizontally, a bit further out, and then it seemed to want to go further out, and finally, in the end, I opened the doors of the garage, and it went right outside. That's why I went abstract in the first place. I want the sculpture really to be a real entity, and more like talking between two of us than that general stuck-up on the plinth.
The thing I've always worried about sculpture in the open air is I don't want to set it far off like a sort of romantic addition to the countryside. And I think most of these sculptures oppose that look. They're more like a house than like a bit of hill.
Let's take a piece of wood or a piece of steel or a terracotta lump and you work from that. You know, when I was doing a recent sculpture, there was the terracotta lump, there were some things that were beginning to come, and then there was an old wardrobe, in fact, which was metal, bashed in. Let's try that on.
Steel is a very good sculpture material. Steel is very forgiving.
The battle to make an abstract sculpture, which was so hard, is over.
Well, I'm joined by Richard Riley, who's Head of Exhibitions Visual Arts for the British Council. I wonder, Richard, just to give us a bit of context, could you explain why you think that Anthony Caro's work is so important?
I think listening to Tony himself speaking then, he talks about removing this sculpture off the pedestal. And at the time, that was really a radical move. And he basically reinvented and reinvigorated sculpture. Also through his teaching and his practice over 50 years, he set a very high benchmark and proved to be an inspiration for successive generations of artists. I think it came as a complete shock because in the 1950s, Caro had worked with Henry Moore as his assistant, and his own work at that time was figurative and cast in bronze. It wasn't like Moore's, it was tougher, it was rougher, and it had an energy, a raw energy. And he had success. He'd shown in the Venice Biennale in 1958 in a group show, he'd won an international prize, and he'd had commercial success. He'd sold work. He could have carried on like that, but he felt he needed to break away from Moore, he needed to break away from the figure. And following a trip to the United States in 1959, he came back and began making completely abstract work. And I think that was a raw shock. He had a major solo exhibition at the Whitechapel Art Gallery in 1963, which in a way was the breakthrough. It probably did cause a fair amount of adverse criticism, but that was the moment. And from then on, his reputation was assured. Quite often I visited. I mean, it really was a true workshop with gantries and welding, a lot of noise going on. He would have a team of young artists often working for him. But he had a studio manager, Patrick Cunningham, who'd worked with Tony since the late 1960s. And they were really joined at the hip. Tony was the genius who had all the ideas, but Pat could help him realise the making of the sculpture. He never stood still. He would always be challenging himself in new directions. And in the last 20 years, he worked in paper, he worked in ceramic, he learnt new processes. He was always pushing himself. I worked with him on a number of occasions over 20 years. He was delightful to work with. I mean, he was wonderful to spend time with. He was very engaging, very kind, very generous, as well as being inspirational to just be with him when we were installing an exhibition. We would normally set it up, and then he would come and do some fine tweaking. And like all great artists, his eye was assured. He was awarded the Order of Merit in 2000s. So, of course, he was used to the company of the Queen and Prince Philip. But he was a man who was very comfortable with all walks of life. He was very generous with young artists, young technicians. And when we worked overseas, he was always very kindly towards the art handlers who were moving his work around.
We're going to close tonight with Noel Harrison, who died recently at the age of 79. Noel Harrison was the son of Rex Harrison, and although it looked like he might become a big star in America in the mid-1960s, he never really got out of his father's shadow, which is too bad because he was quite a talented guy. He could act and he could sing. He got the lead role in the TV show The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., the sequel from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. in the 1960s, but unlike The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. bombed. So he went back to his love of folk singing. He was a great folk singer. He looked the part and he could play the guitar. His signature song is indisputably the best version of the song from the Thomas Crown Affair starring Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway, The Windmills of Your Mind, composed by Michelle Legrand with lyrics by Alan and Marilyn Bergman. No one ever sang The Windmills of Your Mind better than Noel Harrison.
Like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning, on an ever-spinning reel, like a snowball down a mountain, or a carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple, whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind.
It's ironic, he's a much better singer than his father was. He did an album of Beatle covers in the late 1960s. He does a superb version of Strawberry Fields. Listen to it.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry Fields. Nothing is real, and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry Fields forever.
Sorry about that quality there. Yeah, he was really good. You should see if you can get a copy of that sometime. Noel Harrison doing Beatles songs. Of course, everybody always wanted him to do stuff from My Fair Lady. So here he is on American television doing With a Little Bit of Luck with John Davidson, which is not even a song his father sang in My Fair Lady.
No matter where, on land or sea or foam, the Lord above made man to help his neighbour black. With a little bit of luck, with a little bit of luck, when he comes around you won't be home.
Yeah, he was forced to do that stuff to make ends meet. Later in life, he went back to England and he sang some of the songs that he was familiar with. He loved Leonard Cohen and Jacques Brel. Another one of his hits when he was young in the United States was Leonard Cohen's Suzanne, and here he sings it near the end of his life at the Glastonbury Music Festival.
Suzanne takes you down to a place near the river. You can hear the boats go by. You can stay the night beside her, and you know that she's half crazy. That's why you want to be there. And she feeds you tea and oranges that come all the way from China. Just when you mean to tell her that you have no love to give her.
Like I say, it's really too bad Noel Harrison didn't become a bigger star. He was always in the shadow of his father. I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer, Sid Taps. And I'm going to close with Noel Harrison singing with the Smothers Brothers. He probably met them at the Hungry Eye in San Francisco in the mid-60s. This is a song by Cowboy Jack Clement. I didn't mention it when we did the Cowboy Jack Clement podcast a couple of weeks ago. The one on the left, and they made up some lyrics for the Smothers Brothers television show, and it's a great performance.
Brother and myself are going to join Noel Harrison, who comes to us fresh from his canceled TV show, The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. Go right down the drain.
Hey, Tom, that's not like, don't do that.
Well, we always speak the truth on our show.
I know we do, but it's rude. I
show us-
apologize.
Noel, I apologize for his
Listen,
rudeness.
that's perfectly all right. I think the truth is very important.
That's right.
My first series was cancelled.
Yeah,
It was. Just like yours. Even though I fail for a whole hour each week, you guys could only fail for half an hour each week.
You got a point there.
Don't let it bother you. Maybe you'll make it yet if you keep telling the truth.
Yeah, but
It
as
is.
I was going to say to Noel that it's not too popular today to tell the truth.
No, you're right. The truth is not very commercial, but not getting along is, and here's a song about not getting along. One night in a performance on a major television show, they finally got together, 3 losers in a row. They sang a thrilling folk song about 3 singing youths.
It was a rotten number, but at least they told the truth.
Well, the one on the right had failed as an angel, the one on the left had just failed.
And the guy in the middle was a girl from U.N.C.L.E.